Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Deercast, and today we're going to be talking about chronographs and whether you need one. So this is a Caldwell ballistic chronograph, and I'm probably going to start by just talking about chronographs in general, how they work, what they do. So chronographs will tell you the speed that something is moving, and the way they do that, or the way this one does it, is it's got a sensor here at the back, a sensor here at the front. If you fire a bullet down this sort of channel here and between these two and sets of antenna, it measures the speed with which the bullet passes between the two sensors, and will then display the speed of it in the front here for you, either in meters per second or feet per second. So I'm just going to put that aside. The question is, do you necessarily need a chronograph, especially in the context of deer stalking? I think if you're using a mainstream caliber and you're using factory loaded ammunition, you're probably absolutely fine without one. And by that, what I mean is, say you're using a 243 and you're using sort of factory loaded ammunition, then it's probably going to be deer legal and you don't necessarily need to go out and check that with a chronograph. Some people would argue that it's worth having one, because if you know the speed that your bullet is going, which is probably going to be different to what's stated on the box of ammunition, because on the box, that's normally what the factory have tested it with, and they've normally tested it with a slightly longer barrel, because it's normally done either in Europe or the US, where they tend to use slightly longer barrels than we use here in the UK. So people would say it's worth verifying the speed of that, because then you can calculate your bullet drop if you know how fast the bullet's going and the weight of it. Now, I tend to sort of slightly contradict that and say that actually it's worth actually verifying your bullet drop by putting a piece of paper out 100, 200, 300 and 400 meters and actually seeing where that goes, because even with the best ballistic software out there, and even if you know, say, your barrel twist rates, the barrel length, the bullet weight, the bullet speed, the humidity and temperature, you can put all of that into a ballistics calculator and it can still sometimes get it wrong in terms of your bullet drop. So I tend to prefer going out and doing it on paper for real, rather than relying on the reading from a chronograph and a ballistics app. If you're home loading ammunition, then chronographs can be quite useful, because not only can you verify that your bullet is fit for purpose, because if you're loading it, in theory you know roughly what velocity you're aiming for, but you've no way of actually checking if it's reaching that velocity without running it over a chronograph. Secondly, you can also check how consistent your ammunition is. So you can shoot a string across a chronograph, check the speed of each one across the screen here, and you know whether they are coming out consistent speeds, and therefore whether your reloading process is working and whether you're doing it consistently enough. If you're shooting slightly weird and wonderful calibers, it can be worth using a chronograph to check if they might or may not be deer legal. So thinking perhaps 223 up in Scotland, for example. I have a chronograph because I hand load ammunition. I tend to use it once, maybe twice a year, because I hand load ammunition, and that way it's quite useful for me to verify what speeds things are and aren't doing. Other than that, if I was using factory, I probably wouldn't. That one was a Caldwell ballistics chronograph. I bought it for about £160. That model has been discontinued. They have brought out a new model which looked, for all intents and purposes, exactly the same, but it's been flipped upside down. So that green base unit now sits at the top, and the antenna sort of go downwards towards the ground. The newer model is about £300 online. You can get other models from other different companies as well. The Caldwell model I've got on with absolutely fine. We're not going to do a detailed review on it today, because with it being discontinued, it's a bit pointless me putting out a review on it if you then can't actually go out and buy it. But for all intents and purposes, it does the job that I want it to. It sometimes struggles in certain sunlight conditions, and sometimes doesn't necessarily get a reading. If you're shooting, say, 5 bullets through it, it might only pick up, say, 4 of them. But for what I'm doing, serves a purpose. So there you have it, very quick sort of short video on whether we think it's worth having a chronograph or not. Be interested to hear from you as viewers, whether you have chronographs, whether you think they're worth using, whether you don't use them, and if you do have a chronograph, what make, model you use, etc. As per usual, please like, comment, subscribe, and we'll hopefully catch you on the next one. Thank you very much.